Well, Donna, here we are again. It's week 9.
are.
It's week 9, and it's
Who'd have thought we would have lasted this long?
9 whole episodes. Unbelievable. And we've had
even-
so much to say.
Remember when we first went out together, they said we'd never last. Now, we can last 9 weeks in a podcast and 43 years of marriage. They're all wrong.
They're all wrong. Now, Donna, you didn't have your bottle of champagne today, but...
No, because I've got a special guest.
special guest. We've got someone very special with us today, haven't we?
Absolutely.
It's our director, our movie director for Photos in the Attic. It's Franco Di Chiera.
Our lovely
Hello
Franco.
there.
Hello, Franco. Thank you so much for joining with us today. We have a few questions to ask you, and we just want you to spread your brilliance and your wisdom to our listeners.
I'll do my best.
So, Franco, I suppose the first question is, tell us a bit about your past in terms of the great work that you've done for SBS and a few other things in WA and everything in the past.
Oh, well, I go all the way back to Murdoch University, the second year of its establishment in Western Australia. And I did a communications course there. And then I had a girlfriend that was going over to Sydney on holiday, and I joined her. And we stayed with an old lecturer friend of ours, and she was working at the Australian Film and Television Radio School. And I found out about the school, and she said, "Why don't you apply?" So being strategic as I am, I thought it would be advantageous to apply from Perth, not New South Wales, because of the regional kind of preferences. And I got in. And I was very fortunate to have ended up in the same class as Jane Campion, Jocelyn Morehouse.
Oh, wow.
Wow, big
DJ
names.
Hogan. So it was quite an incredible year. I was in 2 years with them, but then I took a year off and came back and joined another group of very interesting filmmakers as well. And then my graduation film immediately sold to SBS, and I got lots of gigs through them, directing dramas and docos, and I ended up doing a really wonderful mini-series called Under the Skin, which was kind of like a launch pad for emerging writers and directors from a range of cultural backgrounds from around Australia. And it took 5 years to get up. No one believed that it would ever happen, and it went through a lot of difficulties and lots of rejections, but it ended up winning Best Miniseries in the Australian Film Institute Awards, now known as the ACTRA Awards, and
Wow.
and won 2 Writers Guild Awards, and launched the careers of a number of filmmakers who are now considered some of Australia's great luminaries in terms of screen production. People like Tony Ayres and Pip Carmel and Belinda Chaco and Luigi Acquisto and Monica Palazzari. Who won
Franco, would you say that those years were the peak years of the Australian industry to some degree?
Look, it was just after the Renaissance. The Renaissance of the industry was in the 70s, but in the 80s there was a bit of a boom because of MBA. And interesting films were being made. And then when you got to the 90s, you had things like Priscilla, Muriel's Wedding.
Yes.
Just the most amazing films. And, it was an exciting time to be a part of that emerging group of people, and I forged my own path, which I was really committed to cultural diversity on the screen. In fact, I did a documentary series called A Change of Face, which challenged notions of Australian identity on the screen and caused quite a sensation and generated the highest level of publicity in SBS history and made newspaper headlines, and SBS took out full-page ads. And that had a real impact because, organisations like Actors Equity, now known as the Elite, they used that series to try and educate people about writing characters of non-English speaking backgrounds, or casting people from those backgrounds, or filmmakers from those backgrounds. So it had a real impact, and as well as providing a stepping stone for a lot of those filmmakers who, as I say, are now still working in the industry and doing amazing things.
And I suppose then too it was a stepping stone for Australia to start making a mark in the film industry? Many of the
Well,
projects were Australian.
Yes, well, in particular, SBS used that drama series to show the federal government under Keating's Creative Nation what SBS was capable of in the drama area, because until that time it didn't really have much of a budget. And it persuaded the Keating government to set up SBS Independent, which was the first commissioning arm of SBS. So through my doco series, A Change of Face, through Under the Skin, it actually opened up an incredible world for SBS and Australian
content.
Yeah. Franco, have you always had an interest in feature films, or has it been sort of documentaries?
No, I've been interested in both. I mean,
do you have anything sort of? Do you like one or the other better?
No, because I've always argued this when sometimes I teach, and I've headed up a film school, the West Australian Screen Academy at Edith Cowan University, which has its collaboration with WAPA, third-year acting students. And basically I always say it's about the storytelling. It doesn't matter what form the storytelling is. It's about the story. And that can be a doco, it can be a drama, it can be a book, it can be a poem, it can be verbal, it can be anything, it can be a song.
Music, yeah.
It's about the storytelling. That's all that matters. And as far as I'm concerned, both are visual storytelling, doco and drama, and you still have to. I've got a commitment to, classical storytelling. Yes, you can tell anti-structure stories, you can tell minimalist stories, but the ones that are most accessible to audiences are classical storytelling, and that's going back to the whole Greek myth storytelling.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
And where you've got a 3-act play or a 3-act structure and a climax, and you've got turning points, and you've got inciting incidents. And, I've seen that played out. I've used those techniques in storytelling in my docos as much as the drama. And in fact, with a doco I did, I actually got the ratings from SBS every minute, and I charted how it went up and down with the audience's the audience size.
Right.
It mimicked exactly the 3-act structure.
Oh, wow.
Exactly the climax of the film, and that's where the peak of the audience was. And then, of course, when it hit the resolution, of course, it all went down, and then that was the end of it. So I'm a great believer in classical storytelling, and that's why I love your film.
Actually, Franco, I think what you've said there in the last couple of minutes, it's been the reason why we've been so, I suppose, endeared to you and the interest that you've shown, because we believe in a great story as well.
And ours definitely is a classical structure.
It is.
It's a story that we believed is across years, and we were stoked to have you show an interest in our project because of what you've just talked about, your passion for telling a good story and making it last across years. It's not just a one-off. We believe our project is forever, so touching on a lot of themes that carry through. So definitely you're the right man for the job.
Franco,
you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, so much of what's getting made is forgettable.
Yeah.
And it's not people aren't going to refer back to it and want to see it again. It's digestible, throwaway, contrived.
Predictable.
I'm not interested in that. I want, films with authenticity, integrity, that make a difference. That, the whole thing about changing the world, you don't change the world through facts and figures. You don't change it through being contrived and manipulative. You change it by being authentic and affecting people's emotions. That's how you change people's attitude. That's how you get over racism. That's how you get over homophobia. That's how you get over misogyny. You get people to identify with your characters with the full range of human emotion, not just happy, not just sad, but both the light and dark, and you make them real so that they can identify with them. And if you have cardboard cutouts, you're not going to make any difference. If you're going to do a doco just telling the facts, it's not going to make any difference. You need characters that people can identify with, and that's what makes the difference.
Yeah.
And I think that's the challenge in today's world, the whole film industry come television industry. That's a challenge, isn't it? And unfortunately, the challenge has sort of been put to the side a little bit because at the end of the day, it's what makes money, isn't it?
Well, in Australia, most Australian feature films don't make money. I mean, even a successful Australian film on, say, a budget of 5.5 million, if it does really well, they'd be lucky to return 60% of the private investors' funds. So, you know, we have to accept that it's not a sustainable industry in terms of being commercially viable. It has to be subsidised. And that's why France has got such a vibrant and exciting industry, and the locals do go and see their films. So, you know, and they've also done so many creative things as well.
Yes.
And look, Australia has had successes at the box office, so there's no denying that. And we probably have a better hit rate than a lot of places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
the interesting thing about that, just looking at the Olympic Games and the opening and closing ceremonies from France, their depth of creativity and meaning and historical reference was just astronomical. I
agree.
I couldn't leave it. It mixed in drama, it mixed in dance, music, art, showing us all the different areas of Paris and the history that happened in each of those places, and the buildings that people can recognise. And even the Paralympics opening ceremony, the dramatic effect, it's true that the French have that depth. They have a depth of history too, I suppose.
Which may be something that we don't have. But
we're such a young
but our
country.
stories, the traditional Australian stories that have been told in either mini-series or movies have been quite incredible stories, a lot of them.
And we're opening up to our Indigenous friends and trying to learn all those wonderful, deep stories that they have to share. So we're learning, I think.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's the thing about artists. They've got their finger on the pulse.
yeah.
So there's no point funding agencies, platforms, whoever, telling the artists what they should be doing. They should be listening to the pool of talent that's out there who have their finger on the pulse, because that's what's going to resonate with the audiences, because they know subconsciously. It's like the collective subconscious, you know? And so that's what I love about filmmaking, is that the number of times I've gone to make things and the timing has been perfect and touched a chord and meant something to audiences.
Yeah.
And I guess that's sort of what happened with David Lightfoot when he contacted me about this project. You know, he had been a war veteran himself, and we had worked together on a mini-series which had sold to Italian and Australian television. And, you know, it just seemed he felt that I was right for the project, and when I dug deeper, he was right for the project. And it's sad that he's no longer with us, but he played his role in getting us together, and, you know, it felt like it was meant to be. I mean, David had suffered post-traumatic stress. He'd been a great advocate for returned soldiers who'd been struggling with all of that, and many had committed suicide. And so this story meant a lot to him. And, you know, that's the thing about what you'd written, is that, you know, it had so much authenticity. It was emotionally powerful. It was well researched, because you guys, you know, are war historians. And, you know, I could see when I read the draft that he sent me, I could see the film up on the screen. It was like I was watching it.
Yeah.
And I loved it. So we all have our hearts in this film, and it's all touched us. And I was also obviously impressed with the fact that it was developed with the assistance of Screen Queensland, and you guys had collaborated with Hollywood screenwriter Shirley Pearce, who'd done projects for MGM and Sony Pictures and 20th Century Fox and Disney. And it also had attracted the attention of some top producers and directors. And even though things hadn't worked out with them, it showed a vote of confidence in the project as a theatrical film, that the story was ripe for the big screen. And I could see this film unfolding. And, I had also loved the film, Peter Weir's film, Gallipoli. But this has all of that, but with the added twist of a love triangle. And like a lot of other Australians, I'd been fascinated by how so many young men and women volunteered to defend their motherland, Britain, but also wanted to do the world and embark on a big adventure, as I know that you discussed in one of your earlier podcast episodes when you were talking about the film. But it wasn't just that adventure that they'd imagine. It was, hell on earth, and there were horrific injuries. There was death. They suffered mental illness and grief. And, but then we also get the wonderful mateship, which is so essential to the Australian, ethos and the Anzacs, and like between Bill and his Aboriginal mate Jimmy, and the extraordinary romances between Bill and Isabel, and the love he left, Isabel was the love he left behind in Australia, and Rosie, the nurse he meets while recovering from a war injury in France. So, the story captures all of those elements, and there is also the exquisite beauty and life-affirming nature of Lewis and his wife's iconic photographs of Australian soldiers, and that's the inspiration for the movie for you guys. So there's that light and dark, which is just like life, really, and people will be able to relate to it, and that's what I love about it. Ultimately, Photos in the Dark is a love story exploring, the divided loyalties of someone in that situation, but also to do with the madness of war. And it really pulls at the heartstrings and shows the loss of innocence as the characters face really extreme challenges. And, I think that's what we all loved about the story, and what David loved about the story.
And I think I will be forever indebted to David. He gave us you, and he also gave an interpretation, a military interpretation that I would never have imagined. So, and Shirley's additions to the screenplay, etc. All of these great people along the way have made the script, and your editing and your advice as well, have made the script such a piece of art now, whereas before it was just, I will always say, just a primary school teacher interested in history. When I look at the first draft compared to what we have now, because of all the roles that everyone we've been lucky to come across have entered into the story, it is complex now. It is rich. It can be taken on by anybody, somebody who's involved in history, someone who loves the World War stuff, someone who just loves a love story, someone who loves France, someone who loves a country town in Australia, and Indigenous participation, follow up after the war. I'm just very grateful to the depth that this story has gotten now because of all the players who have joined in along the way.
And I still don't believe that it's a story that's been told. We've been told other stories. There's other great war-type movies that have been made and stories told, but I don't believe there's been one that's told this behind-the-lines story that is so significant and gives us so many insights that you just don't get from the movies where you've got them on the battlefield all the time. Franco, just moving back a little bit, what was David's first sort of, when he contacted you first, what was his initial contact?
I knew you had asked me that. I can tell you, and I can share it with you. Basically, when he what happened was I was in Rome writing.
As you are, Franco, of course.
Of course I was. And he wrote to me and said, I hadn't heard from him for 20 years after we'd done series together, and mini-series, which was called Three Forever, by the way, and in Italian it had the title Tre de Sempre, and they had the late, great Bud Spencer of the Trinity.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
And it had amazing people involved, like Domenico Procacccio, who's now one of the biggest film producers in Italy, and Rolf de Heer, who's had numerous films competition at Cannes and one of our most respected filmmakers. Anyway, David liked the projects that I sent to him because he asked me if I had any, and we started talking about a possible collaboration. And then after I got back to Australia, he told me about the feature film project that he was really keen about called Photos in the Attic. And he said that it had a long journey, a painful
Yes.
A bit longer now, but yes.
There's a new script being done, and whether I'd like to read it with a view to directing it, because he thought I'd be great for it. And I thought it sounded really very touching, and I said I'd be delighted to sort of take a look. So I read it and gave some feedback, and that feedback was well received by him and you guys. And I kept being sent the new drafts, and I kept providing more input.
Yes,
and so it all started from there, and it was a very easy collaboration, very respectful, and we all had our hearts into it, as I said. And for me, having had a background in both drama and documentary, I could see its dramatic potential as well as its factual accuracy and authenticity, and so it made sense when I found out that two of the main people driving the story, you two, were World War I historians, had a special connection to the song, because that's where that insight came from, you know.
Yeah.
And I want to mention, because you were just asking about it before, about what's different about this film. I mean, you know, it's not just about the story, it's also got to be cinematic. And, you know, stories for the screen have to be visual storytelling. And this has got that in spades. And so that's part of the reason why I could see the film up on the screen.
And we initially thought also, from your previous work and what you'd done after David mentioned you, we thought that because of your passion for it, we saw that you were going to be the person who brought that cinematographic.
Not just the interest in chasing people's histories and respect for that, but your realisation of small European villages and how they operate too, and your appreciation of a different culture to the Australian culture. So once again, like I say, everyone that has come into this picture over the past years has added.
There's been a reason. We
it.
believe that it's all part of the journey. And look, I don't know whether that's a normal thing for films, Franco, but we believe it's been part of the journey. And look, am I right in saying that a lot of films don't get up within...
A lot of films don't get up, but the ones that do have their unique path, and sometimes very long, tortured paths.
Oh, thank you. I feel so much better now, Franco.
You need that. Why now, Donna?
Tortured, yes.
No,
I know.
It is true. I mean, let me tell you, in my experience, there's absolutely no relationship between the smoothness of a project and its final outcome on screen. So you could have a shit fight of a shoot and have a brilliant film.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have a shit fight of a film. You could have a very smooth shoot and have a terrible film.
Yeah.
You know, it's about listening to the material as well to get the...
And Franco, I believe...
It's about storytelling. You tell the story more than once, you know, like there's the story in the script. Then there's the interpretation of the actors and on set, and the director retelling the story on set, shooting it, and the cinematographer visualizing it. And then there's the editor and the director editing it, and you retell the story, you retell the story, you retell the story. And eventually it's like Michelangelo's idea that you don't make a statue out of a piece of marble. You find the statue in that piece of marble.
Beautiful.
On the grain, the direction of the grain. That tells you what going to be. And the same with a film. You know, what you end up with, how you shape it, it tells you. You have to listen. You have to be intuitive. You have to let it tell you what it's going to be. You can't go impose it, you know?
Yeah.
So that's the way I've always worked, and that's how I've always found my film in the material.
And I suppose that's one of the reasons why you encouraged us to start with the book, to put it on paper.
Yeah, the book's an interesting thing. I mean, it's, you know, there are a couple of things. I mean, you know, the fact is that it's very hard to get a film up unless there's an existing IP, you know, intellectual property. In other words, what I'm trying to say is it could be a play, could be a book, it could have been even a short film or a television drama, or a comic or book or whatever. And there's an existing awareness in the community about that story and about those characters. And that's an advantage to distributors when they look at a project and consider a project, because, you know, they have to work very hard to make the community aware of the film and its release. But if there's already an existing awareness, then that helps. And so that's why I had encouraged you guys to think about publishing a book. And so it's wonderful that Big Sky Publishing, who specialise in war stories, came on board. So now we do have that existing IP, and that is an advantage, you know, because it helps get the story out there. The fact that you could talk about the book and the story on Channel 9, on the show there, what was it called?
The Today Show.
Where, yes.
With my friends.
And you became a regular, a bit of a regular. I mean, all of that helps. And it will trigger things when people hear about it. They'll go, oh, I remember hearing about that.
Yes.
So that's really important. You know, look, you were talking about the sense of how it's, you know, it was meant to be. Well, I'm a great believer, as I said before, that, you know, you guys... you know, Donna, you've had your family, your nieces that had those dreams about your great aunt, and you didn't even know that they had fought in the Great War. Then you researched it and you found out about it. And you know, you've had this painstaking work, the pair of you, in identifying so many of those lost soldiers. And that's been a real labour of love. And you know, look, it's inspired me to become a bit of a detective too.
Well, I think, Franco, you have, haven't you? You've got your own synchronicity with the story.
That's right. Well, last year around Anzac Day, I came across a Facebook post of an old friend, Tobin Saunders. And some of your listeners might know Tobin as the famous drag entertainer Vanessa Wagner, who performed at the closing ceremony of the Sydney 2000 Olympics. So there's a certain serendipity there with all the controversy around the Paris.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah.
Featuring drag queens, cross-dressers, transsexuals, and gender-fluid people. But anyway, these World War I soldiers fought for freedom, for democracy, and gave their lives for that. And our democracy thrives on diversity of lifestyles, freedom of religion, sexuality, and so on. So that's what we value, and they need to be protected. Anyway, Tobin's post included pics of his grandfather, Harry, with some soldier.
I remember you telling us this story. We couldn't believe it.
And I looked at them and I thought, gee, that looks familiar, you know. Looks like a Tulia photo, because I'd seen the photos you guys
and the backdrop, yes.
And the backdrop.
Yes.
And I immediately identified it as the Tulia farmhouse and the garage area where they took so many of those photos, and they matched the other photos that you'd shown me. And he also had posted another photo, which was on Armistice Day, and I knew straight away that it was the square in
Square, yeah.
And it had an ID on it. It identified the face of his grandfather in that photo with his name, which was extraordinary out of those hundreds of soldiers and other people in the photo. So I mean, I wrote back to him very excitedly and said, do you want to see the photographer Do you want to see the face of the photographer?
Ah, yes.
Who took the photo, who was standing behind the camera when this photo of your grandfather and his mates were taken. And he just couldn't believe it. He said, yes, please send it to me. I want to see it. And he was so moved when he saw the photos of the Tulliers. And he said he would pass it on to his dad. And listen to this, who was turning 90 that day.
Aww.
On that day again, the synchronicity.
Yeah.
So coincidentally, you guys were over in Vineyard Court at the time, and you were there for Anzac Day with your war artist friend
George Petro.
And you've been helping to identify the bodies of diggers buried over there. And so it was amazing that this thing, that you were able to confirm that the group photo had never been identified as a part of the Tullier collection before, and that the armistice photo was the first time someone had ever been identified in that photo.
Yeah, we believe that Tobin's granddad was the only one that we believe has been identified in that photo at this stage. But again,
incredible. It's just incredible.
Yeah, the synchronicity that we keep coming across as we've spoken.
If you had never contacted David had never contacted me. If I hadn't been friends with Tobin, he would never have found all of this out.
And we found a couple of photos that are actually, Tobin showed us a couple of copies of photos that he had access to that aren't even in the collection. They're different photos completely. There's a photo similar.
Somewhere.
So there's somewhere in another, the glass plate is obviously gone.
This treasure trove is being expanded, and it's so important for future generations. It's incredible.
And they're the photo. That's the story that we've hung to.
And I actually believe that all those spirits are up there having a big chat amongst themselves, and they're saying, let's get this story out there, because the excitement in your voice has just risen. Like you said before, if I had a machine to detect the excitement in your voice telling that story, Franco, if we can touch a few other people who go, oh my goodness, that's my great-granddad, or that's my great-uncle.
But Donna,
that's the purpose
I
of the
remember
story.
at the very first exhibition here in Brisbane, the travelling exhibition, when it started, the number of people that came and wanted to have their relative identified in some form or fashion.
We're hungry for that.
And they were hungry for it. And again, when we have stories like yours, Franco, who, as I said, it all makes sense that you're part of this because you have helped to make that all happen. And the ability to have this story get out there more, and when people see it, it will again get their memories going, and who knows how many more can be identified.
Well, look, I think what happened with Tobin, obviously was a real breakthrough.
Oh, yes.
And then you guys went on to uncover Harry's story.
Yes.
Which so much to Tobin and his family.
Yeah.
And we have it now
look,
as a story.
We are honoured to be able to be in that position, because we get a real buzz from it too, because we feel like we're ticking these names.
You can
off.
put
we're
it all
giving
together,
these faces names.
and they become real people. They're not. And as I've said often, many times, we know a lot of the heroes, but these were just everyday guys who came and served for king and country.
They were just everyday heroes,
and they were there, and now they are being recognised and they're being identified. And if Photos in the Attic can do that, our job has been done. It's a legacy.
Our main purpose was to identify as many of these soldiers as we could in the collection, but now it's become more than that. And I think over this history of getting this project to where it is now, we didn't realise that at the beginning. So the past few years have given us that gift, that this will be something that is deeper than we expected.
And I think that Valerie and the crew at the museum in Vignacourt, last year we had the soldier by the name of Dylan, his surname. He was possibly the first Indigenous photo that has been identified from the collection, and he's in a cemetery nearby. And next year, hopefully, we're going to identify a few more guys that are buried in cemeteries close by that actually were part of the collection. And all of that is going to add to this really rich tapestry to tell the stories even more.
But we can't tell a story without a wonderful director.
Nope.
And Franco, you're our man. So we thank you for all of the behind the scenes, the editing.
Oh, Franco, there's a couple of times today, Donna, that I've almost teared up because the passion, Franco, which, you know I am a passionate man, but your passion has helped us incredibly, and we are just so appreciative that you have jumped in, boots and all, and you are still with us up through the ups and the downs, and will continue to do so because I know we all have the same desire to see this thing happen. And I can just see it on the screen like you talked about earlier on. I can see it as well.
I can see Rosie's face.
Oh, and I can see the story just coming to life. And I know you've got that in your mind too, Franco, haven't you?
Well, it's been an incredible journey just for the years that I've been involved, which, as you know, it's been 4 years.
Yeah.
And, there is that real sense that this story must be told.
Yeah.
Need people's help to make it happen, because unless we have those advocates out there, it's really difficult with all the hurdles of trying, getting the film up is like winning the lottery. It's like climbing a mountain, and it involves a lot of hard work to get there, and we need lots of people's help to make it happen. You know, it doesn't happen by itself.
No.
And
a very collaborative industry.
Yeah.
And you do need that passion. You do need that belief, and you do need that sense that, the universe is conspiring to help you. Otherwise, you'd give up.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
I think, Franco, I feel we won the lottery when we found you.
Oh, Michael.
No. Franco, I can't wait to be sitting in a chair
He's not even drinking,
I can't
Franco.
wait to be sitting in a chair beside you when you say action. Oh, that's what I want to be. I want to be. You might want to get rid of me after the first day, but I want to be there when you're sitting there. I just want a little chair to sit next to you and I want to watch you make movie magic. Franco, it has been delightful talking to you this morning. Thank you for giving up your valuable time, as I know you always do. We can't wait to see you in Melbourne again. And, mate, we've only just touched the surface, haven't we, Donna?
We have.
We could have gone on for another hour and a half with you, Franco, because I know you've got as many stories to tell as we do.
Well, I want to thank you two for your vision and your commitment and your beautiful storytelling. And I want to thank all the people along the way who have come and gone.
Yeah.
Yes.
And in particular, our beloved David Lightfoot, who, it's his belief in the story that has got where we are now.
Yes, so. Absolutely. He was the one who started the real things
it was
happening,
a real
that's
story.
For sure. And I believe he's up there with those soldiers.
He and the
and I keep talking to him daily and saying, "Come on, David, it's time." So I know he's waiting.
Antoinette and Louis, the C brothers, David, and all the others are there, and Tobin's granddad as well, looking down, cheering along. I hope.
Yeah.
Well, let's hope. I know that Kerry Stokes says he's got his hands full at the moment, but he knows about this story. He bought the collection, and luckily Australians can have access and see those beautiful photographic plates.
Yes.
Hopefully, I know you guys have been regularly in touch with his office, and we'll stay in touch as things progress.
We will, and they've been very supportive.
They've been so supportive of us, and that's, again, everyone has been so supportive of this story.
And Russ with his Lost Diggers books, and Lost Tommy's
Max
books,
and everyone else.
Max Utrecht,
and all the people along the way. Long list, but we look forward to having a drink with them all when you say action, Franco. Mate, have a lovely weekend, rest of the weekend. Thank you so much, and we look forward to talking to you soon.
Okay, thank you for
Ciao.
Ciao.
Donna, well, that's a wonderful opportunity again today.
Absolutely.
I tell you, I was just absolutely... Franco has such an insight and such an incredible ability to... And I can see what he's going to do, can't
Yep,
you?
it's going to be beautiful.
It's going to be more than beautiful, and it is. It's just absolutely special. And oh God, we're blessed to have him.
We're
blessed to have him along the way.
We thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
But folks, now look, we're going to maybe have a bit of a break over the next week. You've probably had 9 weeks of us thousands enough, but something very exciting. We are going to be in Vignacourt in 2 weeks' time. And what we want to do is we want to tell you a story from Vignacourt. So our next podcast will be live from Vignacourt in France. And hopefully we'll be able to tell you some interesting things then.
And don't expect Michael to speak any French because he can't. But we'll see how that goes.
I'll be drinking the champagne, Donna, don't worry.
So don't give up on us.
No.
Next weekend there's nothing, but the following weekend there may be more.
So
than
stay in
just
touch,
the
and if you haven't already caught up with the whole podcast, make sure you go to Podbean, or you can get us on our YouTube channel, InterCCG, and you can follow all the podcasts there. And if you want to drop us a line at fecos@bigpond.com, give us a bit of feedback if you want to, but we look forward to telling you more stories and hopefully bringing more to life as we go along.
So don't give up on us. We're still around.
And you remember, Donna, when in doubt, why not?
Take a chance.
Take a chance. Have a great weekend, guys, and happy
revoir.
Father's Day to all the fathers.
A biento. Hi, I'm still Donna.
And I'm very much still Michael.
And we're still the Feckners, and we're ordinary people. In fact, we're just teachers. But we've been led on an extraordinary journey.
Life has presented us with some unusual opportunities over the last 10 years, and despite the risks involved, we've embraced them all fully. And our glass is now overflowing with possibilities.
Because we never know
what happens next. Oh, Donna, what have we just had?
Look, this is just a little postscript because of that marvellous interview with
Franco. I just love the way he talks. He talks the business.
He should. He's passionate.
He's passionate.
He's the man who's going to deliver our project.
And that's what we've wanted. And as we've said, most of the people have been passionate on the way, but Franco, I just love his passion, and he brings such cred to the project as well.
So thank you for listening. And I felt really bad because I hadn't had a drink.
No, but she's going to have one now. So she waited. She waited till you finished.
Here's cheers to Franco, and it's from a bottle of Mercier from Epernay in Champagne. Here we go.
Oh, Mercier.
Yeah.
Great.
Nice little place in Epernay.
Great place in Epernay.
I loved visiting there. We always go there every time we visit.
It looks good.
Very tricky to get in Australia.
But after talking to Franco, it'll go down nicely.
Yeah. A votre santé.
And you never know what's going to happen next, because why not?
Take a chance. Merci, Franco.
See you from France, guys.